前回からの続きで最終決戦の地へ。まずはおなじみのワイルドハントの集団との戦闘。ここでお知らせです。灯籠王をずっと飛竜王って呼んでました。お恥ずかしい。今回の編集中に気づきました。編集マジックに騙されました。なぜか突っ込んでくるアーチャーたち。ケステンが生き返っているけど実は偽物で、正体を暴くと戦闘になる。ケステンはもう戻ってこないのだ。先へ進んでいくと敵の待ち伏せに遭う。ここで一度やり直した。タンクを一人先に突っ込ませて、敵を誘い出すと安定する。先へ進むとワイルドハントの集団との戦闘。画面下のアクションバーで見づらいけど、バーソロミューがいたりする。この辺りでアクションバーのところに注目。バーソロミューがあっさり倒される。バーソロミューの活躍しているところ見たことないな。移動するとここで待ち伏せに遭う。狭いので後衛が攻撃されないように注意が必要。先へ進むとここでも待ち伏せ。後衛の間にも相手わちゃわちゃしている。とどめを刺したタイミングで雷が落ちたので、雷系の呪文使ったみたいになった。移動先の建物の中で敵の集団との戦闘。ラストダンジョンみたいなものだし、各所に四天王みたいな中ボスと書いても良さそう。一度戻り別ルートを進むと、ここでも待ち伏せされる。待ち伏せが多いけど、正面から戦えるだけの戦力がもうないのか、ただの待ち伏せ好きなのかな灯籠王は。先へ進みワイルドハントの集団との戦闘。その先でもワイルドハントの集団との戦闘。決して弱くはないんだろうけど、危なげなく倒せるようになったワイルドハントたち。建物の中に入り敵の集団との戦闘。周囲を囲まれており、入ると一瞬準備する余裕はあるけど、召喚を大量に出せるほどの余裕はないまま戦闘になってしまう。難所の一つと言ってもいい戦闘。難所なので一度ジュビロストが倒された。 食材の破片を取り、語り部に渡し次の場所へ進む。移動先であまり期待できない NPC たちと共に、ワイルドハントの集団と戦闘。先へ進みワイルドハント戦。ここではアイテムを取ると敵の襲撃。普通に取ろうとすると後衛がいそうな位置に敵が出てくるので注意。先へ進むと敵集団との戦闘。数は多いけどそれだけでもはや敵ではない。敵に弓が多いので後衛が削られてやり直しに。その先でも敵集団との戦闘。結構数が多いので少し注意してもいい。先へ進むとアウルベアが2匹。ちょっと癒し感ある。先へ進み食材の破片を拾う。破片を拾うと敵の襲撃。難所の一つでかなりの数の敵との戦闘。何度かにわたって増援が出てくるので注意が必要。超長期戦。3倍速でもこの長さ。ガールに話しかけたら武器をもらえた。建物の中に入るとアダマンティンゴーレムが1体。四天王的な敵かと思ったけど、特に四天王な感じはなかった。次のマップに移動して、先に進むと敵との戦闘。この戦闘でジュビロストが倒された。先へ進み敵集団と戦闘。 さらに移動して敵との戦闘。先へ進むと誰かが高所から声をかけてくる。どうもこの最終決戦の場所は、これまでの生きている NPC たちの違いで、行ける場所とかが変化するようで、ノーマルでの攻略時ではこの声かけはなかった。ここで癒しベアとの戦闘。移動した先で敵集団との戦闘。敵の数と質的に難所の一つかもしれない。味方の NPC も一応いるけど期待はできないので頑張ろう。最後の食材破片を回収。ここでもお金を取ると敵の集団が出てくる。語り部に全ての食材の破片を渡すことで、ラスボスへの道が開ける。いよいよラスボスドウロウ王との戦闘。灯籠王は4回姿を変える。実質4連戦みたいな戦闘になる。ある意味魔王で四天王みたいな存在。内律さと同盟していると一緒に戦ってくれる。最初の人型はビルでラブンを率いている。この形態の特殊攻撃の全ての終焉という攻撃が、こちらのバフを全て消すみたいな効果のようで、連戦を考えると食らいたくない攻撃。もしかしたら別の攻撃かもしれない。相変わらず曖昧な情報ですみません。バフを消されたらやり直していたので、3回ほどやり直すことに。全ての終焉が来る前に一気に倒すことで乗り切った。第2形態はノーム型。ノームを率いている。この形態はそんなに強くはなさそうで、灯籠王を集中攻撃すればそんなに難しくはないと思う。ただ灯籠王がワープして移動するのでそこだけ気をつけた方が良い。次が角の生えたやつ型。ワイルドハントの集団を率いている。ワイルドハントモナークがめんどくさいイメージがあるので先に倒しに行っている。そんなことをしていたらジュビロストが倒された。倒されたけどこのまま戦うことに。モナークを倒したら灯籠王を集中攻撃してさっさと倒したい。全形態とも灯籠王を集中攻撃した方が多分楽だと思う。この形態もワープするのでそこは注意。角型を倒すといよいよ最後の形態。火の玉型。敵は灯籠王一体。会話の途中で仲間が一度全滅するシーンが入る。戦闘時に復活するけどバフがほとんど消えている。幸いヘドウィグはバフが残っているので、ヘドウィグに頑張ってもらう。今のヘドウィグなら火力も十分にあるはず。仲間のバフが消える仕様だからだろうか。ラスボスの最終形態の割には優しめの強さな気がする。ロガググのような殺気はあまり感じられない。ついに灯籠王を倒した。ちょっと倒したシーンがあっさりしている気はするけどこれで終了。この後会話の中で選択肢があったりするけど、今回はない律さの申し出を受け入れる選択にしてみた。この後はエンディングでリンジーが後の王国の行く末や、登場した NPC たちのその後、ヘドウィグや仲間たちのその後を語り、最後は最初のメニュー画面になって終わり。というわけで長かったヘドウィグの冒険もこれで終わり。今までご視聴してくださった皆様、 コメントしてくださった皆様、チャンネル登録してくださった皆様には心から感謝いたします。大した攻略情報などもなく、ぐだぐだと続けてきた動画ですが、皆様のおかげで無事完結できました。ありがとうございました。またそのうち別のゲームの動画でお会いすることもあるかもしれませんが、ひとまずこれで終了です。本当にご視聴ありがとうございました。それではまた別の動画で、さよなら。
Taking a piece of the first world with it. Miracles and strange occurrences, both kind and cruel, became the norm. Not that the citizens hadn't grown used to that. Of course, the Lantern King wasn't thrilled with the way things worked out, but who cares? Our leader and Nyrissa, the cursed king and queen, are ever ready to face the power of the eldest. Until that time comes, our leader spends a lot of time in the first world, learning its secrets and testing his new powers. The immortal king and his kingdom became a legend come true in Golarion. Under the wise leadership of the king, the Stolen Lands became a true country. There was still much to be done, of course, and some of it will need to be finished by our heroes' descendants. But there are no longer cut purses on every corner, and the peasants aren't afraid some new self-proclaimed chief will show up and strong-arm himself into power. The king became a true patron of fine crafts. Over time, the castle treasury filled with wonderful gifts from the best masters in the area. Armor, weapons, even magical artifacts, and the collection is still growing. No kingdom can function without its nobility, and the kingdom in the Stolen Lands is no exception. Landowners, ready to share the burden of ruling alongside the king, grew to be more and more influential over time. And the more pompous the court balls and receptions held by dukes and baronets became, the more eventful were the lives of the schemers and freeloaders who always live within the shadows of the powerful. The feud between Brevois North and South, which had been smoldering for ages, never sparked the fires of civil war. Through great effort, our king managed to bring both parties to the negotiating table. While Rostland didn't gain its independence, it did receive wide autonomy rights. Our relationships with both House Sertova and the Sword Lords are respectful, but they've become lukewarm. Because of us, neither side got everything they wanted. Chandra Merve returned to our court, but just half a year later she was poisoned. No one found out who did it or why. The Tiger Lords found it difficult to recuperate after what Armagh did to them. The barbarians remaining in Numeria weren't very happy that we sheltered the deposed chief and his supporters, but they were too afraid of him to attack us over it. That bomb has a long fuse, but it's definitely burning. I'm afraid that a few generations down the road, the grandchildren of the current Tiger Lords may want to retaliate against us for their grandfathers. Pitax almost returned to its former state. A joyful city filled with beers of dubious quality and deals of questionable legality. The old trade houses lost the crown, but they retrieved the property Iravetti had taken from them. Soon, Pitax became almost like a second capital in the kingdom, a thriving city through which rivers of money from across the region ran. Unfortunately, we get much less of this money than we would like. Governor Liachenza turned out to be helpless against widespread embezzlement. Maestro Bellavara gave the Academy of the Arts a second wind. Throwing out mediocre students and sycophants, she gathered within its walls talented visionaries, rebels, and freethinkers. Those whose gifts felt cramped within the walls of more respectable institutions. She managed to do what Iravetti never could, namely, make the Academy truly famous. albeit scandalously so. And so what if, instead of odes to the king, the Academy releases sneering pamphlets and revolutionary leaflets? It only helps his reputation as a true patron of the arts. Trolls and kobolds, two of the most savage native peoples living in the Gnarl Marches, were completely exterminated in the region. The forest paths became much safer, and the peasants' cattle have stopped going missing. Bartholomew Delgado still serves the king loyally. From time to time, he orders peculiar mechanisms and substances from all corners of the world. After receiving them, he spends a few days bragging about some great discovery he's about to make, then ends up gloomy for a few months. Then he receives another package, and the process repeats itself. At night, chilling screams are often heard from his laboratory. After enduring so many storms and troubles, Varnhold eventually turned into a real city. Daring settlers decided to conquer the vast, wild expanses of Dunsword, and despite all odds, they succeeded. The modest colony that almost vanished at the hands of an ancient lich turned everything around to become a thriving city with lively river trading. Mites led by the warrior Queen Bada'a keep causing trouble in the vicinity of the old sycamore. They scare the fishers, hold centipede races, and drag anything they find lying about back to their caves. Clothes left out to dry, dog kennels, even anvils. When the king visits them, they seem to calm down, for about a day, sometimes even two. Oleg's trading post continues to thrive, attracting even more travelers. Much to its owner's displeasure, a small town is springing up around it. Despite Oleg's grumbling, he and his wife are well regarded by everyone, and Svetlana was even elected town chief. Making sure her sister was safe, the former bandit Kressel traveled south. Her trail went cold somewhere in Absalom's docks. They say she changed her name again and now serves on a trade ship, hiding from old acquaintances. Jod remained loyal to the king to the end of his days, healing the sick and generously sharing his austere wisdom with anyone who wished to hear it, and some who didn't. Having fulfilled his duty to the ruler, Erastil's priest peacefully departed this world, surrounded by friends and disciples. Having participated in Lamashtu's ritual, Olika gave birth to a strong and healthy baby. Sadly, the child grew into an unruly and violent adolescent. Having maimed a peer at just 10 years of age, the boy escaped to the Gnarl Marches, fleeing the rage of a mob that tore his mother to pieces instead. No one knows what happened to the lad, but legends of Lamashtu's child, who sometimes kills lost travelers and sometimes leads them to safety, are passed on by word of mouth throughout the area. Breinhardt became a loyal ally and trade partner of the kingdom, and Darwin himself had been seen as a frequent guest in the capital. The elegant monarch of the neighboring kingdom has broken many hearts at court. After his visits, many young guards and servants have been seen staring through windows, sighing wistfully about something. The Fae took a fancy to the kingdom, feeling totally at home here. They often play various pranks, but they never do any serious harm. Falcos and Teresia managed to restore the magic forest. Once freed of the anger of the Scythe Tree, people returned to the abandoned village, and it became a haven of friendship between the Fae and ordinary people, just like old times. The lizard folk of the Longtail tribe returned to live on the shores of Candlemere, but they couldn't return to their ancient way of life. Living alongside people, the lizard folk adopted their behaviors, habits, and even religion. More and more of the Longtail tribe pray not to the spirits of their ancestors, but to Erastil or Gorum. They even began to forget their original language. I hope someone writes down their songs and legends before they all sink into oblivion. The goblins who put so much effort into preserving the king's lands obviously felt that gave them the right to do whatever they wanted in the kingdom. Travelers are careful to move in groups when they can, and any peasants who spot at least one particularly toothy stranger immediately raise the alarm. For if you see one goblin, there's likely a whole gang. A delegation of wizards from Absalom and other areas appeared in the kingdom one day, asking for permission to examine the lair of the Lich Farneris the Thoughtful. After completing their research, the wizards spent a long time thanking the king for freeing the world of that monster. In their opinion, he'd been capable of causing the end of the world, maybe even 2 worlds. The sweet teeth departed on a journey, hoping to see as many wonders as possible of this world and others. They keep sending us news from every corner of the map. Their bright painted wagon, drawn by a bull mastodon, crisscrosses Galarian, somehow appearing in the center of one incredible story after another. Evindra was glad to see the Lantern King's plans turn to dust. She spent some time helping restore the kingdom after the calamity, then returned home to the First World. They say the rebellious spirit of her cousin Nyrissa awoke within her as well. Evindra is said to recount our story to the Fae, encouraging them to question the power and might of the eldest. After the victory, the storyteller abandoned his affairs and began spending a lot of time alone in contemplation. He eventually bid farewell to the king and left his lands. But I suspect the inhabitants of Galarian haven't heard the last of this mysterious traveler, for his own story is hardly finished. Amiri remained a pariah to her native tribe, but she stayed close friends with Nylak, who ruled the Six Bears wisely and taught them to survive in the unfamiliar plains and cities. The restless barbarian would often travel for long stretches of time, but sooner or later she would always return to her old friends, bragging about new scars and recounting new feats, many of which Nylak immortalized in song. Valerie stayed to serve the king, and to this day she continues to be a muse to many people. Not just bards and admirers, but to warriors as well. Honest and resilient, Valerie is not just famous for her feats in battle, but also for her patience and kindness, which she says the king helped her discover within herself. Harrim became famous, respected by dwarves throughout our kingdom as well as our neighbors, even as far as the 5 Kings Mountains. He's often been asked to help out or teach others, and he's never denied anyone, despite his grumbling. Some people even listen to his preaching. Lucky for us, there's a lot less howling about the end of the world now, and more wise words of moderation and humility. Not all of his disciples turned to Grotus, but everyone took away something useful from his teachings. Jaethal spent some time at the king's court, but she then left to do whatever it was her new goddess required. She must have become a great inquisitor for Pharasma, as no one would know the ways of the undead and Urgathoa's cultists as well as a former undead cultist would. She was also seen in the company of Salim Godafar. It's unlikely the two became friends, being so different from one another, but it's a known fact that they worked together. Octavia didn't stay still for very long. Soon, she and Reg went to Numeria and started a huge slave rebellion there. They didn't manage to destroy the Technic League, but to this day, slaves speak their names with admiration, and slavers with terror. Over the course of their journey, the two grew as close as ever, leaving their quarrels and resentments behind. After returning from Numeria, Octavia settled in her mother's house and became the king's advisor and loyal companion. Rigangar left for Numeria with Octavia to start a slave rebellion. Over the journey, he really matured and learned to understand others, as well as how to control his anger. After he returned, he took a position in the king's court. Being both formidable and charming, he inspired fear in the hearts of some and lust in others. There are even some rumors that he almost talked Octavia into marrying him, and possibly even continuing the Della Fiorni line. Tristan stayed in the Stolen Lands. Endowed with a special blessing of Sarenrae, the priest became known as a great healer and went on to perform many more miracles. I'd say the Movonic Diva deserves the right to rejoin Sarenrae's divine army. I hope the goddess will think the same when Tristan's hour comes and his soul is up for a new judgment. Ekin spent a few years in the Stolen Lands, and in that time won glory as the most rugged monster hunter in all the River Kingdoms. The ranger exterminated even the most harmless of the monsters around the capital, then moved on to other lands and new victories. They say the ruthless avenger and slayer of wild monsters made it as far as Katapesh. That's where his trail went cold. I'm afraid Ekin may have become the prey of one of his targets. Jubilost returned to the life of a traveling explorer, frequently visiting his favorite kingdom. He said so himself. His famous work studying the First World all opened with a dedication to his longtime companion, the king. Another name was also mentioned, 2Z, my guide and inspiration. Admirers would ask Jubilost many times about this mystery lady, but he would only chuckle, pitch his knapsack on his shoulder, and return to storm the vast expanses of the First World once again. As for Knock Knock, I mean Hero Knock Knock, he continued his questionably heroic efforts in the Stolen Lands. Despite whatever mess he fell into, no matter the danger he leapt into, he always seemed to scrape through just a little better off than before. Like true heroes, he simply never gave up, struggling on and meeting the challenge of each new day with a spirit that no mishap or misfortune could ever quell. The slightly inaccurate statue of him and the king still stands in the square to this day. The two figures side by side. I've always felt that, while the heights may be a bit off, let's say, it accurately reflects the size and spirit of the goblin hero who'd been nurtured by the teachings of his king. Kalika remained in the kingdom, though her desire to witness the world's wonders keeps driving her to take long journeys. But when she is home, she spends much of her spare time with her sister. They don't quarrel anymore, and have stopped dragging each other into trouble. Canera settled down in the capital and became a very busy entrepreneur. It seems as though every hour is planned, meeting with rich merchants or inventors whose work she's promoting. But on her way home, she never fails to stop at the market to personally buy some sweets for her sister. Between Canera's business sense and Kalika's charm, they founded and successfully run not one, but 3 organizations. A trading house, a shelter for tiefling children, and a school of magic devoted to Nethys. Despite all the woes that befell the country, our king remains a strong leader. Many noble houses from neighboring lands wouldn't hesitate to be related to him, and they regularly send a variety of marriage proposals. As for myself, the author of this book, Lindsay, who never chose a pretty nickname, I'm still here, inside my creation within the Capitol Library. I live just like I always dreamed, surrounded by people and books, and not a day goes by without someone turning my pages. My story inspired many others to take up the quill. My readers have written many fierce books, articles, and pamphlets, flinging truth in the faces of tyrants. What more could I dream of? I hope, oh honored reader, that this story offered you some daring ideas, or at least some entertainment. In any case, it's time to set the final period.